Hey YouTube fam, welcome to another edition in the series How to Mix Your Beats. If this is your first time here, thanks for joining us. And today's focus will be on panning and the benefits of using this function when mixing. And if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button right now and also the notification bell so that you get regular updates whenever I post in this series. Also connect with me on my other social media pages to stay in touch. And later on in this tutorial, I will be sharing some valuable tips as well as a special link for you guys. So watch till the end of this video so you don't miss out on that. So without taking up too much of your time, let's get right into the subject. Okay, so let's first talk about binaural panning. Here's a quick definition from Rory PQ on blog.dubspot.com to give you guys some understanding. Binaural panning is an effective method that emulates human hearing by allowing you to position the direction of a signal source so your ears perceive the sound as coming from either in front, behind, above, below, and to the left or right of the listening position when using a stereo output. This alternative approach to panning is a great mixing technique used to place individual sound sources at different spatial positions. So as Rory explains here, binaural panning is quite different from regular stereo panning that only involves the left and right side of the stereo field. In essence, it gives you immense creative freedom with the pan function to give the listener a more dramatic, three-dimensional listening experience. And I usually use it for three main purposes, namely A, to make my mix wider or just to make it sound bigger. B, to make certain instruments more present, mainly my kick drum and my bass line, because in genres like trap, hip-hop and EDM, you want that kick to knock and hit you in the chest, right? And the bass to be up front and nice and present in your mix. C, to give instruments their own position in the stereo field so they don't just all sit on top of each other, which is the reason why your mix maybe sounds a lot smaller and clogged up and you can't discern the sounds properly. Now, binaural panning is generally used for headphone or earphone purposes, which is great because most people listen to music on their mobile phones with earplugs or headphones these days. But you can, however, use the integrated conditioning of binaural pan in Logic Pro X to ensure a neutral sound that is suitable for speaker playback as well as headphone playback. And there's a handy little plugin called binaural post-processing that you can use for this. And the best way to use this is as a send effect on an aux channel, so you can send all the sounds panned with binaural panning to that bus. And then you can access the compensation mode pop-up menu and select speaker CTC crosstalk cancellation for speaker playback. So let me show you guys how I usually use it in a mix. On a channel strip, you have a pan pot, and when you right-click on it, it gives you three options. Then go in and select binaural panning. To open the binaural pan window, just double-click on the pan pot and it will give you the window with all the necessary parameters and options. So this circle represents your listening environment, and this smaller circle in the center represents your head. Obviously with your left ear and your right ear on the sides. And this little ball is called a puck, and you also have a stereo spread function, angle and distance and so forth. You can also choose to make the sound bigger or smaller with this slider at the bottom right here. And it also gives you two modes called planar and spherical. And planar, which is a two-dimensional mode, gives you the option to choose the tilt and tilt direction of the sound, like so. Spherical doesn't actually give you those options though, so I usually use planar mode. And also make sure that you switch on diffuse field compensation at the bottom here. So let me solo this track to demonstrate how this works. To basically give my kick drum more presence and to make it hit you hard in the chest, I just move the puck closer to the center, but if you do this, just please make sure that you watch the angle so that it stays at a 0-degree angle because you want to have a dead center. I'll explain that a little bit later in the tips. I usually use this in tandem with parallel compression, which I will also break down in the next episode on compression. And I also do the same with my bass line. So check this out. Now I can basically go ahead and experiment where to position my other sounds, or maybe just one or two others. You don't have to overdo it. It all depends on what you find works best for that particular beat. Now let's talk about using panning to create movement in your mix. The worst thing that you can do, guys, is having all of your samples and instruments just sitting there static. But what you really want to do is make them sound more animated and alive to create excitement. And there are a few ways that you can achieve this. For example, when selecting sounds and samples to start off creating your beat, choose sounds that already have like a delay or modulation effects like a phaser or a flanger, etc. Panning from one speaker to another continuously to create the illusion of movement to the listener. Or you can apply these effects afterwards to a dry sample or sound or instrument, as I will show you in the next example. So as you can see, here I have some chords played with the Rhodes that I will add some panning to demonstrate what I mean. Another idea is you can automate panning on certain effects like a reverb or delay tail, only in a particular spot to create excitement in that part of the track. Here's an example. So let's move on to the standard stereo pan function and how to use it correctly in Logic Pro X. This tip is mainly for Logic users because this DAW has some differences in its functionality than other DAWs. So Logic's pan pots are not actually a realistic pan function. All it does when you supposedly pan to left or right is increasing the volume or level of that side of the stereo field you're moving the knob towards. So if you, for instance, had an instrument with information on both speakers or information panning from left to right on both speakers, you will in effect lose the information on that side you're panning away from. So I've basically left a link in the description for you guys to another YouTuber's channel that explains very simply how to do this properly in Logic. So be sure to check that out as well. Okay, so let's get into that valuable tips that I promised you guys at the beginning of this tutorial. Tip number 1. Don't pan your bass and main kick left or right. Always keep them dead center. The reason for this is that you want the foundation of your beat, which is the low end, to be solid and stable throughout the mix. Another good tip is to keep your snare dead center as well, unless you're working with a vocalist and you want to pan the snare slightly off center to put more focus on the lead vocal. But this you can only do in certain areas of your track to give it more impact, like the verse, for example, or a bridge, since the snare and the vocal resonates in about the same frequency range. Tip number 2. Use a plugin like the Gain plugin in Logic or any plugin that doesn't add any processing but with a stereo/mono switch with which you can check if there's any phase cancellation happening while you are panning. Ultimately, you'd want your mix to give a proper representation of each sound as they are panned when being played back on mono systems as well. Tip number 3. Don't overdo creating movement in your mix. This mainly applies to sweeping pans from the left to the right side or vice versa in the stereo field to avoid clashing. This will just be disorienting to the listener, and even though they won't be able to distinguish what's putting them off about your beat, it will. Subtlety is key and should ideally be used on 1 to 2 instruments or at certain spots in the arrangement. So that's all that I have for you guys today. Thanks for joining me once again, and if you have any more questions or comments, please leave them down below in the comment section and I'll get back to you guys as soon as is humanly possible. Also hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't done that already, and click the notification bell if you'd like to get more updates whenever I post on my channel. And just one more reminder, please also follow me on my other social media pages so we can all keep in touch. I've also left a few links in the description box down below with some interesting articles on panning that I do recommend you guys check out as well. And last but not least, as promised, there's a link in the description box as well for you guys to Sennheiser's free VST binaural pan plugin. It's called AMBEO Orbit, and it's for Mac and for Windows users as well. So if you guys have a DAW that doesn't come with a binaural pan function, check that out as well. It is absolutely free. And thank you so much for watching, fam. I will peep you as usual in the next.